So today we're going to be looking at how to solve literal equations. If you need to refer back to some older videos about how to solve equations with one variable, I suggest you watch that first. Otherwise, today we're going to be looking at equations that have two different variables. So our example here is solve 4m minus 3n equals 8, and we are solving for m. So the very first step, I've rewritten the equation right here, because the first thing that you need to do is make sure that you identify the correct variable that we're solving for. I like to circle the variable. That way I can make sure I'm keeping track and isolating the correct variable. The first thing that we have to do is start out by adding or subtracting. And in this case, we want to focus on these 3n right here. We need to get rid of the 3n first. And to do that, we always want to do the opposite operation. So here we are subtracting 3n. So to get rid of it from this side of the equation, we would need to add on both sides 3n. So I write plus 3n on both sides, and because negative 3 plus positive 3 cancels out, I'm left with just 4m on this side of my equation. So I rewrite that so that I can continue solving. And on this side here, I have 8 plus 3n. When I'm rewriting it on this side of the equation, I need to make sure that I write it out fully. So 8 plus 3n. The reason why is because you cannot just add 8 plus 3, because one of these is a number, so 8 is just a number, and 3n is a variable. So remember that you cannot combine your numbers and variables like that. So you need to write it out fully here. So step 3 was to rewrite the equation and pay attention especially to combining like terms. So do not combine unless they are like terms. So once I have rewritten the equation, the only thing here that is left, in order to get m by itself, I need to get rid of this 4 that is in front. So this is 4 times m, right? So there's a multiplication here. So to get rid of this coefficient, I just divide. I do the opposite operation. I divide on both sides. So I do my opposite operation. I'm dividing on both sides, so I'm just left with m by itself. On this side of the equation, I'm going to rewrite the whole thing, so 8 plus 3n over 4. This would be my final answer here. So this is an acceptable answer. You can leave it like this. However, normally you do want to simplify your answer, so once you've gotten here, we will go through the steps of simplifying. So to simplify, the first thing that you have to do is you have to take this larger fraction and you need to break it up into two smaller fractions. So m is going to equal 8 over 4, which is going to be the first fraction, and then 3n over 4. I kept this plus sign here that was originally part of the expression, so make sure you keep any plus or minus signs the same. Once you have split this up into two smaller fractions, you want to simplify any fractions that you can. So in this case, I can simplify 8 over 4 because 8 divided by 4 is positive 2. And then this other fraction right here, 3n over 4, this can't be further simplified, so I'm just going to leave it as a fraction. So you can either write it as 3/4 n, or you could write it like 3n over 4. Either way would be fine. And this would be the most simplified answer. Let's look at another similar example here. In this case, we want to solve for x, and our equation is u equals xw plus z. There's a very similar setup with this equation, so you'll pretty much follow the same steps as the example we just did. I'm going to circle my variable of interest and start with the addition subtraction. So I want to get rid of this plus z, so I will subtract z on both sides. Again, I want to rewrite the equation, so I'm going to write u minus z because we can't combine these. They're different letters, so we have to write it out fully. And after this cancels out, I'm just left with xw. So the same thing happens here where when I'm solving for x, I need to get rid of this w. So anything that is being multiplied, I will use the opposite operation and divide on both sides to get rid of it. And I will just be left with x equals u minus z over w. The simplified version of this one would be if I broke this up into two separate fractions and I wrote it as u over w minus z over w. And that would be my final answer for this problem. So for example 3, in this case it says solve for p, and we have parentheses here. So we're solving for this variable. One thing that you can do when you have parentheses is, even though we've already looked at distributing, for these types of problems, sometimes you don't need to distribute. So notice how we have p on the outside, we're multiplying it times this whole parentheses, so r plus s. And when you have something written in parentheses like this, you can actually multiply, divide the whole thing. So I'm going to divide, I'm going to do the opposite operation to cancel out this whole thing, r plus s. So I'm going to divide this on both sides. This way, I cancel this out. I'm just left with p by itself, and my final answer would just be q over r plus s. You don't break up this fraction because we have multiple things in the denominator, so you would keep your final answer in this form. Alright, our very last example, example 4. This problem looks a little bit different, but we've talked about before what to do when you have these denominators right here, when it's set up as a division problem. You always multiply whatever number is on the bottom on both sides. So multiplying 11 on both sides will allow us to get rid of this denominator over here. So I multiply 11 on both sides, I cancel it out, and you want to rewrite the entire numerator. So whatever was originally in the numerator, you want to make sure you keep all of that the same. So 10ac minus x was in our numerator. And over here, negative 3 times 11 is negative 33. So now this problem is a lot simpler. We know how to solve it when it's set up like this. Remember, we're solving for a. Always keep your eye on the correct variable here. So we want to first add x on both sides. So we're left with 10ac on this side. And again, we write this whole thing out because we cannot add these. They're not like terms. So we just write negative 33 plus x. And now we need to isolate a. We need to get rid of this 10, and we need to get rid of the c. So usually we would divide on both sides, but in this case, whenever we have multiple things that we need to get rid of, right, they're all being multiplied together, we can divide these simultaneously. So I'm not just going to divide by 10, I'm also going to divide by c, because all of this is being multiplied together, so I can divide all of it. Whatever I need to get rid of. So I'm going to cancel out the 10 and the c simultaneously. And that just leaves me with a equals negative 33 plus x divided by 10c. You can leave your answer in this format. You don't need to simplify further.